What's going on, everyone? It is Phil, the Harness Doctor, and today we are going to be working on my 2021 Silverado LT 1500. Today we're going to be working on the heads-up display retrofit. I'm pretty excited to try to attempt and do this retrofit. We've got some great weather finally and some free time, and so with this swap I went ahead and purchased the entire dash off of eBay. And I don't know how much detail I'll go with you guys on this swap, since we will have to remove the seats and the console, but let me show you what I've got. So here's the complete dash that I picked up off eBay. It is upside down. It did come just like this, boxed in on a crate. So here, this will have the buttons as well as the heads-up display. Now, this is the second dash that I bought from this eBay seller. The first time I did this, I went ahead and stripped off the pieces that I needed for the swap. And then I went ahead and disposed of the metal structure. And with this particular structure for the heads-up display, the steel core support has an indentation to essentially mount the projector. So I bought it again. It's been sitting in the garage for about 2 years now, and today we're going to go ahead and get it swapped out. Now, one thing I wanted to point out is some will say, well, why don't you just go ahead and swap out the whole thing in its entirety? But I don't have the extra hands to be able to do that. So for this swap, I'm going to have to take all the components out and transfer those over and then pull the structure off, and hopefully it's not as heavy as this thing weighs probably about 150 pounds. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Some tools I'll be using today. I'm going to be using a drill, ratchet, socket, 7mm, most likely 10mm, an adapter for my drill, Torx T15, Torx T50 to remove the seat, bezel removal tools, a pick tool, and this is essentially to pry up the harness retention clips, those Christmas tree clips. So I'm sure there will be some more tools needed, but this is what I'm going to start with. We may need possibly a 13mm, depending on how much of the pillar trim we have to remove and the grab handle. So we'll go and get started. So we'll start with removing the radio display and those components using a bezel removal tool. You want to work your way through the bezel here and essentially pry this out towards you. Set that aside. Looks like we have some Torx bolts here. Looks like it's a T15. I'll be right back. And if I recall, there might be some bolts down here that hold this whole thing in, so I don't want to pull on this yet. Let's see what we have going on here. Yep, so we have some bolts down here. So I'm going to go ahead and unbolt the center console, shift it back, and then we'll access the bolts down below. Let's see if I can take a look at this from here. So in order to take the radio out, I do have to loosen the console, remove the upper tray, which means I have to take out the side panels because the side panels hook into a notch up here. So I'm gonna get the console ready to get it loosened up so I can get to the 2 bolts down below. Once you have the side panels pulled off on both sides, you are then able to lift the upper tray, open the lid, grab hold of it, and pop up. Show this to you here. So the upper tray comes loose just like that. There are 2 7mm bolts here to loosen from the console, and then the 4 18mm bolts on the floor. Then we can slide this back and get access to the last 2 bolts that hold this radio in. I went ahead and removed the upper tray. When you pop this up and off, you'll have the connection for this module here and then your connection for the wireless here. So I just unplug those two, and we'll set this guy aside. That will now give us access to the two 7mm bolts here that attaches the console to the front dash. All right, so a couple things here. So in order for me to remove the radio dash, I had to remove the center console to get to the bolt at the bottom. In order for me to remove the center console, I had to remove the side trim panels in the front to expose the bolts. But then on this back bolt, I need to actually remove the seats to get my socket to loosen that bolt. So I'm gonna go and do that now. All right, so we're back. I went ahead and removed the center console simply for the fact that I need to remove this trim piece that goes around this bottom portion that closes the gap between the console and the dash. So in order for me to remove this trim, I had to remove the console. In order for me to remove the console, I had to loosen the seats, both sides, so I can lift them up to get to these back bolts here. This center console has 4 bolts, 2 in the front, 2 in the back, and these back bolts are blocked by the seat rail. So I didn't want to remove the seats in its entirety because I'm going to be working on this dash. I want to have a nice, comfortable place to be able to remove things and still be seated. And when it comes time to pull whatever I need off the dash, I can remove the seats at that time if needed. So we're going to continue on with the radio removal. Down here, you've got this trim. And if I recall, this trim just pops out. Wear some gloves, got some sharp edges here. Here's that trim piece. 2 clips on the side, 1 clip in the middle. And then here are the 2 Torx T15 bolts at the bottom. Get those removed. Now we can remove the radio screen, unplug all the connections from the back. Radio removed. All of these connectors, to remove them, will have these red lock tabs. So make sure you open the red lock tab and then you can depress the connector to unplug it, and they all have them. For the 110 outlet, start with the gray. There's a tab here on the side you got to push in on from the side, unplug it, and then you can do the same with the black on the 110 outlet. For the 12 volt, this one was kind of the hardest one. Again, pull the red tab back and then you would press down to release. All these connectors are keyed, so they can only fit into their appropriate spots. So we've got all the electrical undone. I think next we'll remove the glove boxes and then the trim. Looks like there's a stopper here that's preventing this glove box from coming out. And it looks like you just pop this off to the side. Remove the glove box. Looks like this trim piece has some Torx bolts. One here, maybe a 7mm here. And that's the lower piece. Looks like the glove box has 3 more Torx bolts hidden underneath or behind the lower glove box trim. So this one pops out from the bottom and then it slides out. So since I'm going to be disconnecting electrical on both fuse panels, I went ahead and rolled up all of my windows just in case we have some kind of unexpected weather and I'm not caught with the windows down. So I went ahead and rolled all the windows up. We'll keep the doors open for ventilation for now. Looks like this trim piece just has the 1 Torx screw here on the left. Everything else should be clips. Just like that. I guess I'll take some pictures of this so I know how to revert that back when I go to put this back in. I'm going to start removing the 7mm bolts across this area here, and then we'll move on to the driver's side. All right, let's move on to the driver's side. Driver's side, we'll pop this hood off. It just pops off just like that. Here on the driver's side, we'll remove this headlight switch trim piece, Torx T15 on the side. And then it looks like we have a Torx T15 down here. And it just pops out. Like that. Like this trim piece is clamshell design. So it comes out like that. We'll go and remove the instrument cluster while we're here. Cluster out. Got the panel off. The brake cable, or the parking brake, or the hood latch actually was a little bit of a pain, but I was able to remove it. Looks like we have some larger, I think these are probably 10mm bolts here, and some more 7mm down below. I think I may have to remove the grab handles here. So you do have to remove the grab handle to remove the dash speaker grill. Looks like there's clips along the front here, so I'm going to get to the other side and start lifting this up.
We're going to move to the passenger side. We're going to remove the driver or passenger pillar handle, grab handle. Having difficulty with this side. So this handle was a pain. There was a clip here that was up here at the top right corner, and that metal clip kind of stayed in the frame, so I had to essentially yank it out. All right, I'm going to go ahead and remove or unbolt the airbag. I'm wondering if the airbag is attached and holding it in. And it looks like it is. All right, we may need to remove this upper trim piece here. It comes out just like that. Looks like we've got some 7mm bolts up there at the front. And I just lost my 7mm socket in this vent, so be careful working in this upper area. I need to fish that out. Let's give this another go. Oh, looks like I missed 2 bolts up here. I think this is finally ready to come out. Here we go. All right. All right, so I think the next thing we need to work on is the steering wheel removal so that we can take this dash support structure off. Looks like we have some bolts on the back here that hold the support in. I'm gonna start taking some photos of everything here. So to remove the airbag, you want to remove these back covers here. There's one on each side. Then there's going to be a bolt that essentially secures the airbag to the wheel. We'll remove the cover and then we'll remove the bolt. And there's the bolt there. It's a 10mm. With those bolts removed, you can now disconnect the wiring. You've got the wiring for the, I believe that's the horn, and then the airbag. And then again, anytime you see a red tab, you want to push that back. For these airbag connectors, you've got these orange tabs. You want to lift that up while releasing the connector. So let me get those disconnected now. So to remove the wheel, we've got a Torx T50 and then the wire connector. And it looks like this wire connector has a red tab. So pull that red tab back. You get a pick tool for this. So with the pick tool, pull that red tab back, then you can depress and hopefully unplug the connector. All right, so we are unplugged. Torx T50, we'll remove that bolt. All right, so I'm gonna work on disconnecting the ducting from the dash core. And it looks like we have some bolts. You can see in here, they're screwed in from the back. So there's a couple here that I'm gonna remove. There was one up here, one here. So I'm gonna just go around and look at all the AC ducting and disconnect it from this so I can pull this core out. I'm having difficulty removing the steering wheel. My steering wheel cannot lock, so I don't have enough leverage to remove that bolt. So I'm gonna work on the dash core support and see what I can do to get this off. Okay, I was able to get that bolt off. For some reason, my wheel did not lock, so I had to get some extra help, turned it all the way to the left to give me leverage to take that bolt off, but I've got the wheel disconnected. We should be able to just pop the wheel off now. With the steering wheel removed, we now have access to remove these 7mm bolts to remove this bottom cover, and then we can remove the shifter with this bolt here. There's a wire harness that goes in underneath here. So remove the wheel, remove the bottom cover, remove the shifter lever so we can remove this dash support structure. All right, so I have the shift lever removed for the headlight turn signal. Disconnect the wire harness from the back and then push down on these tabs on the upper and lower to remove that. And now we should have space to clear and remove this dash core support. I've seen some folks where they were cutting this to not have to remove the steering wheel, but I didn't want to do any of that. So wanted to show you guys the level of effort to be able to do this swap. So again, there could be an easier way to remove the whole dash support altogether, but I just don't have the resources to do all that. So I'm having to do it this way. All right, so here we are. I've got the dash cover, dash shell removed. So now it's time to move on to the HUD dash. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at the structure part of it because that's part of the difference in the design. So we're gonna go ahead and take apart the HUD dash now, and we'll do that in the garage. All right, to give you an idea of what all had to come out for this swap, here are all your vent pieces and your dash support structure, the dash cover,
all of your electronic components all laid out. And now we will move on to the HUD dash, essentially removing all the components and taking what we need and transferring it over to the truck. All right, so I'm underway here on getting this HUD dash torn apart. And I did mention earlier that, we simply don't want to swap out the entire thing and use the harness that comes with this dash for a couple of reasons. So this dash is actually outfitted with bows and my dash is not. And so the connectors on these are actually different because GM has the entire system architecture completely different between Bose and non-Bose systems. So you simply don't want to remove the whole thing out and then replace it with the new dash. You want to take the parts you need and then add the functionality you're trying to gain. So in this case, we're trying to add heads-up display. So again, we don't want to use the entire dash harness. We just want to take the components we need out, add it to the truck, and then install what is missing. So just wanted to point that out. All right, so I have the two upper dash pieces removed. The bottom one is my factory dash, and the upper one is the HUD dash, and you can see the opening for the HUD projector there. So we'll go ahead and take what we need and continue moving forward. All right, so this is where I'm currently at. I'm struggling a little bit getting this factory dash harness out for the purposes of removing the steel tubing support. I'm stuck at this spot here because there are some modules back here that I just can't get to. And so I went ahead and started removing the side bolts to the dash itself. It's a 13 millimeter and then a 10 millimeter long bolt here. So I'm gonna hopefully start finagling this structure out. It is different on mine. There are no brackets that hold the HUD projection or projector bracket down. So I do have to remove this entire steel support. I'm hoping not to touch any of the AC stuff. I'm hoping I can just remove the steel support. So that's where I'm currently at, and I am struggling a little bit. So stay tuned, we'll keep moving forward. All right, so current state, I was able to separate the steel core support from the HUD dash away from the AC blower system. And the reason why I don't want to have to remove this from the truck is because of the inlet and outlet lines. So the goal here is to not have to remove this from the truck side and simply be able to separate the steel core. So that's the goal. It was a pain. There are bolts behind that will be difficult to access with this in the truck. So I'm going to give it a go. All right, so had to remove the windshield wipers and the cowl because I need to get that bolt right there and this one behind the motor. Let's see if you can see that one right there. So those two bolts, one there and one there, is what bolts into the steel core support. So I need to get those bolts out and then continue working this thing out from the inside. All right, so I've got the plastic dash shell in and I wanted to show you here. The HUD projection mounting bracket. The ducting goes underneath and the ducting is different than what I had before. So we went ahead and put the correct ducting in with the mounting bracket. And this mounting bracket gets bolted on, 1, 2, and 1 back here. So we'll get that bolted in and we'll drop the projection in its place. Well, this is my original centerpiece on the top of the dash and it's wider. And so since we had to change the ducting on it, we're gonna have to swap out this middle piece for the narrower version. So we're gonna just transfer my components over and then use the smaller centerpiece. All right, so another lesson learned. The duct work in my factory duct is not compatible with the trim pieces, so I had to essentially undo everything up here and redo that. So I went ahead and mounted, or I placed the HUD projector on, and I'm getting ready to wire it up. And so with the wire harness, which I have right here, it's a little dark, but I'm going to try to do the best I can here. Let's see if I can turn on some overhead light. All right, so the harness from the Harness Doctor website, my website, will essentially have one end that looks like this, that should plug to the back side of the projector. And you're gonna have a black connector there and then a USB port. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna plug this end into the projector and one side of this USB cable. The other side of this USB cable will land, it'll go behind the cluster, so it's going to plug in next to this connector on the cluster, okay? The other end of the HUD harness will plug into the HUD switch, which will be right here. The rest of the wires in this harness will be labeled. And these three wires, the black, red, and green, will be landing to the cluster connector. And you can see here, I'll have it labeled, the red wire, the green wire, and the black wire. And essentially, we're going to be splicing those, see, into those positions. So 7, 20, and 19 on this connector. We're going to remove some of the backing. We're going to take this connector apart, and we're going to splice those three wires into those positions here. And then the harness will have a lonesome yellow wire that will go to the headlight switch. And let's see if I can get this to zoom in here. And this one will go into position 2. So on the headlight switch, we're going to locate position 2, which should be this black connector. And we'll locate position 2, the wire on this connector, which should be this yellow wire, second one from the left. This yellow wire right there, we're going to splice in, and that should do it. So you do have to get a compatible cluster that is programmed by White Automotive and Media Services for HUD, and essentially the harness from my site at Harness Doctor. So I'm going to get this wired up, and I'll be right back. All right, so I'm here at the headlight switch, and it is this yellow wire here in position 2. This white with the purple stripe is position 1. And if you take a really close look, you can see some reference numbers here at the corner. So you see a 1 here in the top left, and then a 6 in the top right, 7 bottom left, and 12 bottom right. So we want position 2, and it's going to be this yellow wire right here. So we're going to take our yellow wire that we ran from the harness, and we're going to cut some of the insulation off, and we're going to splice it right in. And here at Harness Doctor, this is how we perform splices here. So we will cut a little bit of the insulation off the wire that we're working on, and then we'll put a screwdriver through the middle of it to make it like a needle. And we're going to feed our wire through and wrap it around about 3 times. And then we're going to solder it, and then we're going to finish it off with some electrical tape. And then we'll wrap everything up with automotive harness tape. All right, once you have the cluster connector taken apart, you're going to be doing the same thing. We're going to be splicing in the red wire to position number 7, which is this red wire here. And if you look at the connector, you'll see, again, reference numbers here. If you're holding it just like this with the red wire on the bottom row, the bottom right corner is position 1. So as you count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 will be this red wire. And then when we look at the other side, I think it starts off at 17, 18, and then this black wire with the white stripe is 19. So this black wire with the white, could be a black with the yellow, it's really hard to see. But this black wire is 19, and then the green wire is 20. So we're gonna splice our red, green, and black to, again, red number 7, black number 19, green number 20. So I'll set the phone down, I'll get those spliced in, and then we'll get everything taped up. And here what the splices look like. Let me lower the light here a little bit. So anytime I'm splicing multiple wires on one run, I like to stagger my splices so you can kind of see they're spaced apart just a little bit, so that when I solder everything and tape it all up, in the event there's some failure, these wires will never have the opportunity to touch each other and short out. So I like to stagger my splices when I'm doing a multiple splice on a wire harness. Got everything put back together. There is the new HUD switch. Got the HUD projector on the dash. Everything's back in one piece, no errors. I actually added the cooling duct for the wireless charging pad when I had the dash out. So here we have it. So the HUD is actually projecting right now. And it's going to be flickering because of the camera refresh rate, but I can adjust the brightness down to nothing or increase it all the way up. I can control the position of the placement, moving it down or up, and then the info that's displayed on the screen. So there you have it. Next is to get my windshield replaced. As you can see, it's cracked. I need to get the version that supports HUD. It's a special windshield that has a lamination for better projection of the display. So there you have it. Can you add HUD to a truck? You sure can. Until next time, guys, this is Phil, the Harness Doctor. We'll see you on the next one.